251 corneal change. The next morning, the two of them began to get busy. Xiaoxing went to the hospital for the consultation, while Yu Bing went to the machinery factory to check out the production line. There were 3 machinery factories in S City. After Yu Bing spent a day checking all of them, she gained a certain understanding of the equipment to be imported. Yu Bing still planned to wash the washing part manually for the time being, but cutting vegetables, stirring, cooking, and packaging had to be mechanized. The machine for cutting vegetables could shred, cut into pieces, slice, or mince the vegetables. As long as the mechanic parts at the incision were changed, the desired effect could be produced. In 1 minute, the machine could finish the workload of 10 workers. Yu Bing planned to put this machine in the second production room. Yu Bing planned to add 2 mixing machines, 1 in each workshop. Both the large oven and the fully automatic packaging production line would be placed in production room 1. There were a total of 5 machines. The 3 shops offered different prices. The cheapest price was 5,270 yuan, followed by 5,720 yuan. The most expensive one was from the number 1 machinery factory in S City. It cost 6,500 yuan. Yu Bing had her sights on the one that cost 6,500 yuan. After all, you get what you pay for. Compared to the other ones, the use and maintenance of the machines from the number 1 machinery factory were simpler and more efficient. After thinking for a long time, Yu Bing decided to focus on quality. Machines were fixed assets that could be used for a long time, so she couldn't be stingy and had to consider the effects and practicality. Yu Bing planned to bargain tomorrow. After all, the budget given by the factory was only 6,000 yuan. After making the plan, Yu Bing looked at her watch. It was almost 8 o'clock, so she went out to look for Xiaoxing. After Yu Bing knocked on the door, she saw that Xiaoxing didn't look happy. She guessed that the hospital consultation probably wasn't very optimistic. "Have you eaten yet?" Xiaoxing shook his head. Seeing this, Yu Bing raised her eyebrows and said, "I haven't eaten either. I heard that S City's pan-fried buns and barbecue duck are very famous. Let's go and try them together." With that, she turned around and left without giving Xiaoxing a chance to refuse. Xiaoxing hurriedly followed. There was a state-owned restaurant not far from the guest house. Yu Bing was in no hurry to ask Xiaoxing about the situation. She waited for the dishes to be served before asking, "Which hospital did you guys go to today?" Xiaoxing swallowed the bun in his mouth before saying, "I asked previously. The 2 hospitals with the best ophthalmology department are the Medical University and the military-affiliated hospital. I went to both today. The explanations given by both sides are similar. The cornea of Xiao Li's eyes were perforated due to a high fever. The inside and outside of her eyeballs are already infected. The blindness was caused by tear infections. Moreover, the hospital said that treatment of Xiao Li's eyes have been delayed for too long, so they asked me to bring her for a checkup quickly and wait for the results. She might have to undergo a cornea transplant." Although Yu Bing didn't understand those professional terms, she knew that anything that involved organ transplantation was quite serious. "Did the doctor say how much the surgery costs?" Xiaoxing paused for a moment before replying. "The total expense costs about 20,000 yuan. Yu Bing asked, "How much are you lacking?" Xiaoxing didn't answer directly. He only said, "I can save enough money, but the doctor said that there's a queue for the cornea. However, the earlier Xiao Li surgery is done, the better. If there's any change in her condition, even if the cornea surgery is successful, the chances of her regaining her vision will decrease." When Yu Bing heard this, she fell silent. If there wasn't enough money, she could think of a way. If there was no cornea, there was really nothing she could do. They could only try their luck. Looking at the dejected Xiaoxing, Yu Bing comforted him. "Bring Xiaoli back for a checkup immediately after you go back. If you're sure you want her to undergo a cornea transplant, get the doctor to help you guys get a spot first. There aren't many people who can afford this amount of money, so it might be Xiao Li's turn soon." Xiaoxing smiled. "All right, don't worry about us. We can only do our best and leave the rest to fate." The 2 of them didn't speak much after that. After eating, they returned to the guest house. The next day, Yu Bing went to S City's number 1 machinery factory to discuss the price, while Xiaoxing went to S City's black market to see its development. Xiaoxing didn't tell Yu Bing that to pay for the surgery, he was still short of more than 5,000 yuan, so he still had to ask around and see if there were other ways to earn money. Zhang Li brought a few bottles of chili sauce home that day. As Lin Shui looked at her brother-in-law, who had disappeared for almost half a month, she said angrily, "You finally came back." Zhang Li smiled and took out the chili sauce jars from the bag. "Sister-in-law, I went to buy things for our soldiers. In order to get the factory to fulfill my order first, I went to keep an eye on them every day. Otherwise, how could they be so efficient?" Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 252 blocked. Lin Shui took a random bottle and opened it. After she fanned it a few times with her hand, she smelled it and said, "Smells good." Zhang Li smiled proudly and said, "Everyone in your hometown loves spicy food. If you're satisfied, the soldiers will love it as well." At this moment, a sound came from the door. Zhang Wei heard the conversation as soon as he entered. When he saw Zhang Li, he said angrily, "You finally came back?" Zhang Li laughed as he teased, "Brother, you and sister-in-law are really husband and wife. When you guys saw me, you both said the same thing. Let's not talk about anything else. Try these few types of chili sauce I risked my life to bring back." When Zhang Wei heard this, he sized up Zhang Li. Lin Shui grabbed Zhang Li's hand anxiously and checked it. "Are you hurt?" Zhang Li hurriedly explained, "Sister-in-law, don't be nervous. I'm not injured. Among the buddies who came back with me, there was a very tough person called Xiaoxing. He saved me in time. We were stopped by some people near Minqing town and fought with them." When Zhang Wei heard that Zhang Li wasn't injured, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. When he heard that there was a fight, his first question was, "You didn't lose, right?" Zhang Li touched his glossy hair and said calmly, "Don't worry, I didn't embarrass the Zhang family. There were more than 20 of them, but they were all beaten up by us. We called the police and wiped out that group of bandits. They'll be out 5 to 10 years later." Zhang Wei nodded in satisfaction when he heard this. Not bad. The garlic, double pepper sauce, and mushroom beef sauce that Zhang Li had brought back were all purchased by the logistics department of the military region the day after the goods returned. After that, the soldiers who had originally complained about the taste of the food shut their mouths. Finally, Zhang Wei no longer had to hear the same complaint during every meeting. Because of this, the Zhang family finally changed their impression of Zhang Li. Zhang Li was on a roll recently. Zhang Li had left S City for more than 10 days. Although he had a capable right-hand man to help him oversee the black market as the person in charge behind the scenes, it was time for Zhang Li to go and inspect. Zhang Li went to the black market's office early in the morning. After he finished checking the recent accounts, it was already afternoon. After he stretched himself, he left the black market. Just as he was thinking about the next move in his pursuit of Yu Bing, he suddenly saw more than 10 men walking toward him. Zhang Li looked around and realized that he was on a small path. At this time, he didn't see anyone else on the small path, so he felt a little uneasy. Zhang Li turned around and walked back, but when he heard the other party's quickened footsteps, he immediately understood that the other party was really coming for him. Hence, he ran forward quickly. Just as he was about to reach the main road in 10 meters, 3 men appeared at the entrance of the path and blocked the way. After Zhang Li stopped in his tracks and looked around, he determined that the leader was the man who was wearing a floral shirt and standing at the entrance of the path. His expression was calm as he asked, "What a spectacle. You actually found more than 10 people to block my way. You think quite highly of me." The man raised his sunglasses to his head, revealing a pair of sinister eyes. "Third young master Zhang, you don't recognize me anymore?" Zhang Li frowned when he realized that he was Zhou Wu's younger brother, Zhou Kuan, his biggest competitor in S City's black market. "I barely recognized you after you changed your style. Why are you dressed so gaudily? Who are you showing off to?" When Zhou Kuan heard Zhang Li's words, the ruthlessness in his eyes intensified. "Third young master Zhang, if you don't know how to speak properly, I'll teach you." The Zhang family was involved in the military, while the Zhou family was in politics. However, the difference between the two families was that the Zhang family's status in the army was as solid as ever. Zhang Wei, Zhang Yao, and their uncle all had deep roots in the army. However, the Zhou family was in decline now. The Zhou family had 3 sons. The eldest, Zhou Wan, had followed his father into politics. The second son, Zhou Wu, had entered the government on the surface, but he and the third son, Zhou Kuan, were actually trying to seize control of S City's black market share. Zhou Kuan was a ruthless, but simple-minded and petty person. The reason his business could reach its current level was all because of Zhou Wu's command from behind the scenes. Zhou Kuan was only the person in charge on the surface. The last time Zhou Kuan messed up a delivery, Zhang Li contacted the other party and snatched the long-term supply of those orders. This was normal in the business world, but Zhang Li knew that Zhou Kuan must be feeling upset. He didn't expect Zhou Kuan to come looking for him so quickly. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 253 Blocking the dagger. Zhou Kuan didn't understand, but Zhou Wu did. Zhang Li glanced at Zhou Kuan and asked, "Does your second brother know that you came to stop me today?" Zhou Kuan's eyes flickered with a shifty look and he didn't answer Zhang Li's question. Instead, he changed the topic. "If you dare to snatch my order, you have to pay the price." After Zhou Kuan finished speaking, he didn't give Zhang Li a chance to reply. Afraid that Zhang Li would escape later, he asked his subordinates to attack. Zhou Kun only wanted to vent the anger in his heart and make up for the losses he had suffered. He didn't care about the consequences. As Zhang Li looked at the people surrounding him, he immediately clenched his fists in a combat posture. However, he was very apprehensive. After all, he alone wasn't a match for all these people. These dozen people had been carefully chosen by Zhou Kun, who wanted Zhang Li to be bedridden for a month so that he could take this opportunity to snatch a portion of Zhang Li's market share. That was Zhou Kun's true goal. 5 minutes later, Zhang Li gradually lost his strength. He had already been punched twice in the face. After he was punched in the stomach again, he spat out bitter water. Seeing this, Zhou Kun walked forward slowly with an iron rod. "I won't ask for much. I just want to break 2 of your ribs." Zhang Li gasped in pain. "Zhou Kun, don't you dare. The police are here." A magnetic and deep voice sounded from behind them. Zhou Kun's raised hand paused for a moment. Then, he turned around and saw a handsome man in a washed-out blue coat. Even when he saw them fighting, his expression was still very calm. Zhou Kun didn't panic when he heard the police were here. He sized the other party up suspiciously, then turned his head around and said, "Little Five, go take a look. If there are police, think of a way to lure them away." 2 men, one tall and one short, walked out of the small path behind Zhou Kun. When Xiaoxing saw that the other party wasn't afraid at all, he knew that Zhang Li was in big trouble this time. Zhou Kun's intuition told him that the man in front of him wasn't ordinary. However, he still had to deal with Zhang Lin, so he didn't have the time to dwell on it. Hence, he said impatiently, "We have something to do here, so hurry up and leave." With that, he turned around and raised the iron rod at Zhang Li. At this moment, Zhou Kun suddenly felt a sharp pain in his arm. Zhou Kun let go and the rod fell to the ground. Zhou Kun suddenly turned to look at Xiaoxing and stared at him intently as he said with certainty, "You're with Zhang Li." When Zhang Li saw that everyone's attention was attracted by Xiaoxing, he bent down quickly and picked up the iron rod to counterattack. Because they had many people, Zhou Kun didn't make everyone bring weapons. After all, a group of people holding iron rods on the street was too ostentatious. Even the mayor's son couldn't be so high-profile. Xiaoxing could tell that Zhou Kun was the leader. He wanted to capture the leader first, but every time he approached Zhou Kun, he was immediately stopped by his subordinates. When Zhang Li saw Xiaoxing join in, he became invigorated and waved the iron rod in his hand. A few minutes later, when Zhou Kun saw that the other party had the upper hand, he looked at the 2 of them viciously. He took out a dagger from his waist and walked over it in Zhang Li's direction. When Xiaoxing saw Zhou Kun's actions from the corner of his eye, he raised his leg and suddenly kicked the lackey who was pestering him a few meters away. Then, he strode forward and pushed Zhang Li away. However, he couldn't dodge in time and was stabbed in the abdomen by Zhou Kun's dagger. Zhang Li was enraged and smashed the iron rod at Zhou Kun. Then, Zhou Kun pulled out his dagger in pain and turned around to stab Zhang Li, but Zhang Li was already prepared. He smashed the iron rod at Zhou Kun's arm. Zhou Kun immediately retreated after his dagger was knocked away. He wasn't good at fighting, so he had always hidden at the back and waited for protection. Today, right before his plan was about to succeed, it was ruined by a man who appeared out of nowhere, so he took action personally. Zhou Kun looked at the only subordinate still standing beside him. Even though Xiaoxing had been stabbed, he still looked battle-ready and his gaze was fierce. Zhou Kun knew that he wouldn't be able to fight against him now. Moreover, there were not enough people to protect him now, so he was worried that he would be injured. No matter how unwilling Zhou Kun was, he could only retreat for now. He glared at Zhang Li and gritted his teeth as he squeezed out, "Consider yourself lucky this time." Zhang Li stared at him intently. When he saw Zhou Kun walk away from the path with his men, he frowned and went forward to check Xiaoxing's injuries. Seeing that Xiaoxing's clothes were already dyed red with blood, he hurriedly took off his coat and folded it into a long strip. Then, he tied his coat to Xiaoxing's abdomen tightly to stop the bleeding. He placed Xiaoxing's arm on his shoulder and said, "Let's go to the hospital immediately." Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 254 hospitalized. At this moment, Xiaoxing was holding his abdomen and sweating profusely from the pain. Fortunately, as soon as the 2 of them reached the main road, they saw a man on a tricycle. The man was a warm-hearted person. He pedaled the tricycle quickly and sent the 2 of them to the nearest hospital. As soon as Xiaoxing arrived at the hospital, he was pushed into the operating theater. As Zhang Li looked at the closed door of the operating theater, he heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he immediately remembered that he had to inform Yu Bing. Yu Bing spent the entire afternoon in the factory bargaining with Section Chief Mr. Ma. In the end, Mr. Ma lowered the price by 300 yuan. Although it was still over budget, she was unfamiliar with S-City after all, so she couldn't pull strings. Yu Bing was already satisfied that she got a 300 yuan discount. Yu Bing handed over the deposit of the 2,000 yuan that Zhang Li had given her the day before yesterday. Yu Bing felt distressed about giving away so much money so soon. However, when she saw the contract signed by the two parties, she couldn't help but smile because this meant that the food factory had advanced into modern mechanization and its development had taken another step forward. As Chief Ma registered the delivery information, he asked, "Miss Yu, when should we send this machine over?" Yu Bing thought about how Xiaoxing had already consulted with the hospitals, and the rest had to wait until he brought Xiaoli over for a checkup. The earlier they went back, the earlier Xiaoxing could bring Xiaoli over. Hence, she decided to return to Yi Mountain Village tomorrow. "Please send it over tomorrow." After Mr. Ma recorded the register time, he said, "We'll leave at 8 tomorrow. Don't be late." After the negotiation, Yu Bing felt relieved. She strolled around outside for a while before returning to the guest house leisurely. As soon as Yu Bing entered the guest house, she saw her name on the big blackboard behind the front desk. This blackboard was a little like a message board. After guests who had missed calls returned to the guest house, they could find out who had looked for them through this method. Yu Bing thought that it was a call from the factory, so she took out her identification and went to the front desk to ask, "Hello, I'm Yu Bing. Who called?" After the young lady at the front desk confirmed Yu Bing's identity, she opened the notebook in her hand. "It's a call from the hospital. A person called Zhang Li left a message for you. He said that Xiaoxing is injured and asked you to go to the hospital after you return." When Yu Bing heard this, she hurriedly stuck her head out to look at the message in the record book. After confirming it, she hurriedly left. Fortunately, Yu Bing had a map with her. After finding the place according to the road map, she immediately took a taxi. At the hospital. After Yu Bing entered the hospital lobby, she went to the consultation desk first. "Hello, can you help me find out where Xiaoxing is being treated?" The nurse at the consultation desk hurriedly asked, "Don't be anxious. What is the patient receiving treatment for?" Yu Bing was stumped by the question. "I don't know either. I only heard that he was injured." The nurse quickly made a judgment. "Injured patients usually go to the emergency room first. Just go to the end of this path." After Yu Bing thanked her, she walked towards the emergency room quickly. "Hello, has the emergency room treated a patient called Xiaoxing?" The nurse at the emergency nurse station looked through the records and replied, "Yes, he had a knife wound. After the surgery, he was transferred to room 306 on the 3rd floor." After reading the records, the nurse looked up and was about to remind Yu Bing when she realized that the young lady from before was nowhere to be seen. After Yu Bing found the ward, she pushed open the door to enter. The ward was a 2-person ward. Xiaoxing was lying on the bed with an 4 drip in his hospital gown, while Zhang Li was lying on another empty bed with a swollen face. He had taken off his shoes and was eating an apple with his legs crossed as he chattered nonstop. When Zhang Li saw Yu Bing enter, he raised his hand and greeted, "Yu Bing, you're here." Zhang Li no longer had any designs on Yu Bing, so there was no need to maintain his image. Xiaoxing had saved him twice. The first time was during the delivery, and the second time, Xiaoxing was purely dragged into his mess. No matter what, a friend in need was a friend indeed, so Zhang Li already treated Xiaoxing as his buddy. As the saying went, a friend's wife was off limits. Although the two of them had yet to address the elephant in the room, he couldn't make a move on his buddy's woman. Although Yu Bing saw that Xiaoxing's face was still a little pale, the fact that he was staying in an ordinary ward meant that he was fine, so she felt relieved, but then she frowned at the two of them and asked, "What were the two of you doing? Who were you two fighting with?" When Zhang Li heard this, he immediately explained righteously, "It had nothing to do with Xiaoxing. He was implicated by me this time, but it wasn't my fault. Someone else was looking for trouble with me." Zhang Li roughly explained the situation. When Yu Bing heard that Xiaoxing was just helping, she didn't say anything else and only asked with concern, "Then how many days will you be hospitalized for?" Xiaoxing replied helplessly, "I have to be hospitalized for a week." Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 255 Expose. When Yu Bing thought of the delivery time she had agreed on with the machinery factory, she felt a little troubled. It wasn't appropriate for her to leave Xiaoxing all alone when he was hospitalized. Xiaoxing also knew that Yu Bing went to order the machine today and guessed that Yu Bing was probably planning to go back tomorrow, so he took the initiative to suggest, "Go back with the machine first. Food is provided in the hospital's canteen. I'll ask the nurse to help me get food." Nurses could help him get food, but they wouldn't help wash the patient's clothes. This was the family's responsibility. Yu Bing frowned as she thought about how to deal with this. Zhang Li wanted to interrupt and say that he could get his family to send food every day, but he suddenly thought of something and shut his mouth. At that moment, Yu Bing thought about Xiao Li's matter and had a plan. I'll stay here. The machinery will be shipped back tomorrow, so I'll talk to the machinery factory and ask them to bring Xiao Li and Xiao Lin over when they come back. This way, Xiao Li can go to the hospital for a checkup. We'll go back together after you're discharged. When Zhang Li heard this, he secretly revealed a smile of approval. Xiaoxing also felt that this plan was good, but he knew that the village's industrial chain needed many things to be done, so he didn't want to delay Yu Bing. Go back first. I'll give the driver some compensation for his hard work, so when the driver brings Xiao Li here, he'll send her to the hospital entrance. After I'm discharged, I'll bring Xiao Li back to the village after the checkup. Zhang Li glared at Xiaoxing angrily. When Xiaoxing saw this, he frowned in confusion. Fortunately, Yu Bing didn't notice the interaction between the two of them. When she heard Xiaoxing's words, she knew that he didn't want to trouble her. She rejected his idea. Just do as I say. I'll make the call now. Zhang Li watched as Yu Bing left and said resentfully, Xiaoxing, if you don't change your mindset, you'll be single for the rest of your life. Xiaoxing rolled his eyes at Zhang Li. I don't know what you're talking about. Zhang Li sat on the stool in front of the bed and said with frustration, I can take care of you, but why didn't I say anything? I was creating an opportunity for you so that Yu Bing would feel worried when she thought about how you didn't have anyone to take care of you and would stay. But you actually ruined the opportunity. When Xiaoxing heard this, he was stunned for a moment. Stop associating her with me. It'll affect her reputation. When Zhang Li heard this, he revealed a look of disdain. TSK. Stop acting like you're not familiar with her. Do you dare to swear on your soul that you don't like her? Xiaoxing choked, but then he took a deep breath and said, I don't like her. When Zhang Li saw Xiaoxing's stubborn attitude, he snorted. I wonder who was so worried after seeing her get out of the truck that night. Although Zhang Li didn't say anything that day, he saw everything. Xiaoxing coughed lightly, but didn't speak. Seeing this, Zhang Li continued to provoke Xiaoxing. Yu Bing is a kind girl. She's also good-looking and capable. Let me tell you, if you don't make a move, she'll be wooed by another man sooner or later. Even without me, there'll be someone else. Are you really willing to see her smile in another man's arms? When Xiaoxing heard Zhang Li's words, that scene appeared in his mind involuntarily. He suddenly felt suffocated, as if his heart was being pinched by a hand, and his hands, which were under the blanket, involuntarily clenched into fists. Zhang Li was observing Xiaoxing's expression carefully when he suddenly realized that the needle of the infusion was a little swollen. The needle is running. You can't exert force with your hand that has the needle inserted. Seeing this, Zhang Li teased, see, your body is much more honest than your mouth. Just thinking about that scene is unbearable to you. Xiaoxing had never thought that he would fall in love with Yu Bing. He had seen Yu Bing's love and care for his siblings, so his good impression of her was more out of gratitude, and he had always thought that they only trusted each other as business partners. Coupled with the issue regarding Xiao Li's eyes, Xiaoxing had never considered dating or getting married. Now that Zhang Li had exposed him, Xiaoxing realized that he had fallen in love with Yu Bing at some point. It wasn't because of gratitude, but because he was attracted to her as a person. He began to feel conflicted. What's the point of liking her? She's an intellectual from the city. I'm just a country bumpkin. Zhang Li had been born with a silver spoon in his mouth, so he couldn't understand Xiaoxing's mindset. He only felt that Xiaoxing was complicating something simple. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 256 Departure. Gee, this is the first time I've seen you so insecure. You're not like this when you're negotiating orders with me or fighting with others. Why are you worrying so much? If the two of you like each other, just get together. Besides, how do you know she doesn't like you? You gave up without asking. This is so unlike the you I know. Xiaoxing was silent after he heard this, and Zhang Li didn't say anything else either. Xiaoxing had to think things through himself. It was useless for others to say anything else. Moreover, he had already said what he needed to say. Yu Bing called the machinery factory first. Because bringing two children along the way was a simple task and they didn't have to make a detour, the other party readily agreed. Then, Yu Bing called the food factory to look for Jiang Chun. The hospital only provided a single phone for the patients and their families to contact the outside world, so the queue was very long. Yu Bing was already making the second call, so the people waiting in line behind her were getting impatient. After Yu Bing contacted Jiang Chun, she made a long story short. Chun, Xiaoxing is injured and will be hospitalized for a week. I have to take care of him here for the time being. In addition, the machine will be shipped back tomorrow. When the drivers return to S City, give the two drivers 2 yuan each. Then, get Xiaoli and Xiaolin to come back with the drivers. Help them pack their clothes and look for the village chief to write a permission slip for the siblings in the name of visiting their relative in the hospital. Despite her shock, Jiang Chun jotted everything down quickly. Then, she asked who would be the operator of the machine. Yu Bing thought for a few seconds and replied, everyone will learn how to operate it. You're the person in charge of the production room, so you'll be in charge of choosing the worker who masters how to operate it the best. Yu Bing's principle was to be fair and give everyone a chance. After arranging the pickup and matter of the factory's production, Yu Bing hung up with peace of mind. He Mountain Village. Yu Yan had been living very comfortably recently. On one hand, it was because of Yan Yan's various attempts to curry favor with her, and on the other hand, she had finally received the long-awaited letter from the Yu family today. Yu Yan opened the letter carefully. The beginning of the letter said that the entire family was very concerned about Yu Yan's illness and they expressed their worries about her health. Yu Yan felt touched when she read it. Then, they agreed Yu Yan's idea of going home to take a look and said that they hoped that after Yu Yan confirmed the exact time, she would tell them in advance so that the family could clear up their schedule for those few days and accompany her. When Yu Yan read this, she was so touched that tears fell. After reading about the importance they attached to their reunion in the letter, Yu Yan felt even more determined that she couldn't have been abandoned by her parents back then and that she had been adopted because of Yu Bing's scheme. Yu Yan reread the letter a few times. No matter how she read it, she felt that this letter was filled with kinship. She became even more determined about her plan to reunite with her family. The most important thing now was to wait for her adoptive parents to send money over. Previously, Yu Hai had said that in order to prevent her from spending money recklessly, her allowance and packages would be halved. However, Yu Yan felt that they were just joking and didn't mind. In any case, they would send a few months' worth of money every time. When she spent them all, she would urge them to send more. At this time, the food factory received the machines bought from S-City. After the trainers from the machinery factory installed them, they stayed for another day to teach everyone how to use them and repair them daily. On the morning of the day they set off for S-City, Jiang Chun placed Xiaoli and Xiaolin's clothes and food into a bag. Xiaolin, remember not to let Xiaoli out of your sight. Cities are very big, and you're unfamiliar with the place. Once Xiaoli gets lost, it'll be very difficult to find her. Jiang Chun was afraid that the two children would be worried, so she hid the fact that Xiaosheng was injured. Therefore, the two of them only knew that they were going to S-City for a checkup. From the day they found out the news until before they set off, they had been very excited. Not only were they excited about Xiaoli regaining her vision, but they were also curious about the prosperous world they were about to go to. Xiaolin suppressed the excitement in his heart and said to Jiang Chun seriously, "Don't worry, Sister Jiang Chun. I'll definitely hold my sister's hand at all times." Jiang Chun smiled and patted Xiaolin's head as she continued to explain, "I believe you. The driver will send you straight to the hospital's door. Then, you'll go straight to room 306 on the 3rd floor. If you can't find it, ask the medical staff. I wrote down the exact address and placed it in a bag. If you forget it, take it out and read it. Also, the money and stamp must be placed in the innermost layer of your clothes." Xiaolin nodded vigorously. He, who had only been to the village's medical center, thought that this place was for Xiaoli's treatment, so he didn't suspect anything. After Jiang Chun sent the two of them to the car, she asked the driver about their approximate time of arrival in S-City. Then, she went to the office to call Yu Bing and asked her to try her best to pick them up at the entrance. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 257 Arrival. Although Jiang Chun told Xiaolin to look for it himself and gave him the detailed address, that was mainly because she was worried that Yu Bing wouldn't be able to pick him up. In that case, the two children wouldn't have to wait there the entire time. When Xiaolin saw Jiang Chun at work, she took out a letter from her pocket and handed it over with a smile. "The postman came to deliver letters this morning and I happened to see yours, so I brought it over for you." Jiang Chun thought about how a letter had just arrived last week. Why was another letter sent again so soon? After she took the letter, she thanked Xiaolin. When she saw that the sender's name was Cui Jing, Jiang Chun's eyes widened. Because it was work time, Jiang Chun put the letter into her pocket and planned to read it at noon. After chatting with Yu Bing that night, Jiang Chun had been busy working and studying these past few days, so she had almost forgotten about Cui Jing. She didn't expect Cui Jing to send another letter. At this moment, the letter in her pocket seemed to have a sort of magic, captivating Jiang Chun. When she finally returned home at noon, Jiang Chun opened the letter. There were not many words, just 2 pages, but there was a 2-yuan note and a small paper bag of rat poison. The contents of the letter were very simple. First, he expressed his gratitude to Jiang Chun, then he revealed his identity as a soldier. However, he didn't mention what had happened that day. He only said that the matter had been resolved and that interesting things had happened recently. At the end of the letter, he even asked about Jiang Chun's situation at work and mentioned that the special rat poison he had found in the army's cookhouse was very useful, so Jiang Chun could write to him if she needed it again. Jiang Chun burst out laughing when she saw this. The last time she sent him into the mountain, she felt that the silence was a little awkward, so she found a topic to talk about. She even said that when she heard him inside, she thought it was a rat, but she didn't expect him to remember her words. Hence, after Jiang Chun finished reading, she raised her pen and replied to the letter. Then, she sent it back according to the address. On the day Cui Jing received this letter, he was in a good mood. Only then did his subordinates realize that their stoic superior knew how to smile too. At this moment, Yu Bing, who was in S City, was traveling from the market, the guest house, and the hospital every day. At 10 a.m. on the day Jiang Chun told her about, Yu Bing waited at the door. At almost 11 a.m., she finally saw the large truck from the machinery factory. When Xiaolin pulled Xiaoli out of the car and saw Yu Bing, Xiaolin waved and greeted her happily, "Sister Yu Bing." Xiaoli carefully identified the direction of the footsteps she was familiar with. When she heard it, a smile immediately appeared on her face. "Sister Yu Bing." After Yu Bing replied loudly, she hurriedly went forward to hold the hands of the two siblings in relief. They were two children after all, so although they were in a company car, she couldn't help but feel worried. Yu Bing turned to look at the two drivers and thanked them with a smile. "Thank you guys so much. These two little fellows have caused you guys a lot of trouble." Because Jiang Chun had given them 2 red packets early that morning, the drivers, who originally thought that bringing children was troublesome, immediately had no complaints anymore. The two of them took care of the Xiao siblings along the way. "It's not troublesome at all. These 2 children are too sensible. I've never seen such sensible children." Those words were true. Xiaolin and Xiaoli were afraid of troubling them, so they didn't make any requests along the way, and Xiaolin kept cracking jokes. Usually, drivers would find long-distance drives boring, but this made the entire trip much more interesting. The other driver also smiled and said, "Xiaolin is very eloquent. He'll definitely be promising in the future." Yu Bing suddenly felt as if her own children had grown up. As she looked at Xiaolin, she couldn't help but rub his head with a smile. After saying goodbye to the drivers, Yu Bing brought the 2 children into the hospital. When Xiaoli didn't hear her brother's voice, she turned her head and asked, "Sister Yu Bing, where's my brother?" Ever since Xiaolin entered the city, he had been looking around with wonder. When he heard Xiaoli's question, he finally realized that his brother didn't appear. "That's right. Sister Yu Bing, where's my brother?" Yu Bing replied, "Your brother is waiting for you guys in the hospital. He was accidentally injured and got hospitalized. But don't worry, he'll be discharged in 2 days." Although she said that, Xiaoli and Xiaolin's joy from entering the city disappeared, and their faces were filled with worry. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 259Q. 258 discharged. When Yu Bing saw their expressions, she was glad that Jiang Chun had hidden it from them. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been able to sleep well these few days. After all, if they hadn't seen with their own eyes that the brother they cared so much about was really safe, no matter what others said, they would be worried. The door of the ward wasn't closed, so Xiaolin saw Xiaoxing lying on the bed at a glance. When he saw Xiaoxing's rosy face, the worry in his heart disappeared. He immediately regained his usual liveliness and shouted with a smile, "Brother." Xiaoxing heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the siblings arrive safely. "Did you guys encounter anything on the way?" Xiaolin shook his head and kept talking about what had happened along the way. "Sister Jiang Chun prepared buns and eggs for us. The 2 drivers were very good to us and even gave us something to eat." Xiaoli couldn't see her brother's condition, but from Xiaoxing's vigorous voice, she could tell that he was indeed fine. Her smile returned to her face as she turned towards the direction of the voice. Xiaoxing was young and strong. In addition, he had been eating enough food for the past half a year, so his physique was much stronger. His wounds were healing very well. Because he was in a hurry to bring Xiaoli to get a consultation as early as possible, when the doctor came for ward rounds, Xiaoxing requested to be discharged tomorrow. At this time, the doctors didn't earn any commission from medicine. Seeing that Xiaoxing was indeed recovering very well, they agreed to let Xiaoxing undergo another observation tomorrow morning. If there was nothing amiss, he could be discharged. Zheng Li came to report every day, so he knew that Xiaoli came here to see a doctor. The 2 little fellows are finally here. The Xiao siblings greeted him politely, "Hello, Brother Zhang." When Yu Bing saw Zheng Li, she told him about Xiaoxing being discharged early. Zheng Li panicked when he heard this. "Why are you in such a hurry? Stay for another day. You don't have to worry. I'm paying." Xiaoxing looked at Zhang Li and explained, "It's not about money. I want to bring Xiaoli to get her eyes checked as soon as possible. Moreover, the doctor said that I can be discharged in my current state. I have something else I want to ask you for help with." When Zhang Li heard that the doctor had agreed, he didn't insist anymore. "What is it? Tell me." Xiaoxing replied, "I want to ask if you know anyone who works in the medical university or the military-affiliated hospital." Zhang Li smiled. "I thought it was something serious. My second sister is the deputy director of the military-affiliated hospital. Leave this to me." When Xiaoxing heard this surprising answer, he finally smiled for the first time in so many days. He was no longer so worried and his mood instantly improved. In fact, he just happened to pass by at that time and witnessed Zhou Kuan's ambush. Because Xiaoxing knew Zhang Li, he helped him. However, Xiaoxing had decisively made the decision to block the attack. Zhang Li was from S City and his family was powerful. At that time, Xiaoxing thought that if he could save Zhang Li's life, he could ask him to help pull strings with the hospital with regard to the cornea transplant. He was willing to spend more money if necessary. He didn't expect Zhang Li to be so well connected. In this case, they might really succeed. At noon, Yu Bing brought Xiaolin and Xiaoli back to the guest house. She lived in a standard room, which happened to have 2 beds. Unless a couple could show their marriage certificate, men and women couldn't stay in the same room in the guest house. However, because Xiaolin was still a 10-and-a-half-year-old child, after reporting to the receptionist, Yu Bing was allowed to take him to her room. Hence, Yu Bing and Xiaoli slept on the same bed while Xiaolin slept alone. After taking an afternoon nap, Yu Bing planned to bring the 2 children around S City. In the afternoon, she brought the siblings to S City's beach to enjoy the breeze. As Xiaolin, who only went as far as the county city, looked at the merchant ships coming and going on the sea and the port in front of him, he felt as if he had opened the door to a new world. He described the scenery in front of him to Xiaoli excitedly. As Yu Bing brought the 2 of them around, they ate many local snacks. Xiaoxing's dinner for that day was their leftover snacks. The next morning, after Xiaoxing passed the physical examination, he received a discharge certificate from the doctor. Yu Bing went through the discharge procedures. Previously, Zhang Li had generously paid 1,000 yuan for the hospitalization fee and deposit. Now, 889.52 yuan was returned. Yu Bing handed the bill and the refund to Zhang Li. After all, it was his money. Now that it had passed through her hands, it was better to check it right here. If the amount wasn't right, she could explain it clearly. Hence, she said, I counted it. There's no problem with the amount of money. You should check it too. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 259Q. After Zhang Li only accepted the money, he said, there's no need to check. How can I not believe you? During this period of time, you've spent money to buy and cook Xiaoxing's meals every day. How much are the labor fee and grocery fees? I should pay for this. Yu Bing took note of the grocery fees. They were friends, so the labor fees definitely couldn't be calculated. After removing the portion that she should bear, Xiaoxing owed her 8.58 yuan. Initially, she had planned to ask Zhang Li for money, but when she thought about how Xiaoxing had saved Zhang Li and how Zhang Li had also helped Xiaoli, it didn't seem appropriate for her to ask Zhang Li for this money again. Hence, she rejected him. No need. It's not much money. Yu Bing looked calm on the surface, but she comforted herself by telling herself to treat it as buying Xiaoli a shirt. Zhang Li looked at Yu Bing in surprise and suspicion. After all, it was rare to see a miser like her be so generous. Before Zhang Li went out today, he specifically borrowed the car that the army had given him. Hence, after they left the hospital, they didn't have to squeeze into the bus anymore. They drove all the way to the entrance of the military-affiliated hospital. After Zhang Li brought them out of the car, he introduced as they walked. My sister said that Dr. Min is the best in the ophthalmology department. His success rate for the cornea transplant is more than 99%. My sister has already helped us inform him in advance. We can just go to the department to look for him. After saying that, Zhang Li talked about the award this doctor had received, how influential his research was, and most importantly, his success rate for this difficult surgery. The few of them nodded repeatedly when they heard the introduction. They didn't understand, but he sounded quite impressive, so they nodded. After Dr. Min saw Xiaoli, his conclusion was that there was a cornea perforation and a cornea transplant had to be done. Xiaoli was 9 years old now, so this surgery had to be done as soon as possible, preferably before she turned 10 years old. When Xiaoxing heard this, he hurriedly asked, Dr. Min, if we sign up now, what position in line will we be? After Dr. Min found out about the circumstances yesterday, he had already roughly determined Xiaoli's situation. He had also checked the number of people queuing up for the cornea transplant in advance. When Xiaoxing asked, he replied, number 5. Yu Bing had heard that fewer people donated corneas than other organs, so the number 5 didn't seem that far back in line, but in reality, it might take a long time. Dr. Min, how long do people usually have to wait? Dr. Min shook his head. There's no way to tell. If it's fast, it might take a year. If it's slow, it might take a few years. This answer made everyone's hearts heavy. In the end, Dr. Min taught Xiaoxing a massage technique and prescribed some pre-transplant surgery medicine to slow down the lesions in Xiao Li's eyes and buy more time for post-transplant surgery. After they left the hospital, the atmosphere in the car was a little gloomy. Xiaoxing looked at Zhang Li and said, Zhang Li, please help me pay more attention to the follow-up. If I can speed things up by paying more money, I can accept it. Zhang Li patted Xiaoxing's shoulder. I understand. Don't worry. Xiao Li couldn't see, but she could feel that everyone was very worried because of her matter, so she smiled and comforted everyone. It's okay. I can't see, but I can cook, wash clothes, and do anything. It's no different from being able to see. Although Xiao Li hid it very well, from their occasional interactions, Yu Bing knew how much she yearned to see. She was clearly the person who needed to be comforted the most now, but she still smiled and comforted everyone, as if nothing was wrong. Yu Bing felt a lump in her throat. After taking a deep breath, she smiled and said, let's not scare ourselves. Although the earlier the surgery is done the better, obeying the doctor's instructions and delaying the lesion to the greatest extent is equivalent to extending the surgery time. Therefore, the most important thing now is to remain hopeful and take precautions. Xiaoxing understood why Yu Bing said this, so he smiled and echoed, that's right. Do what we can first. We're going back tomorrow, so I'll treat you guys to a meal at the state-owned restaurant tonight. Zhang Li, it wasn't easy for us to come here, so we have to eat your hometown's most special dishes. Zhang Li became excited when he heard about food. No problem. Leave the ordering to me. I'll definitely let you guys experience the charisma of the city's food. Everyone chatted and laughed as they changed the topic. After dinner, Zhang Li sent them to buy train tickets. After this trip to S-City, Yu Bing and Xiaoxing really became friends with Zhang Li, so they bid farewell reluctantly. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 260 Home. Yu Bing and Xiaoxing took the train at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The next morning, they arrived at the train station in City H at 7 o'clock. After changing trains a few times, they got off at the town's bus station at 12:30. Yu Bing bought a bunch of local specialties and even Xiaoxing, despite being injured, carried a few bags of light things. Just as they were wondering how to go back, they saw Wu Qing, who was already waiting at the exit with the tractor. Wu Qing hurriedly went forward and took the things from Yu Bing as he said with a smile, Yu Bing, Brother Sheng, you guys are finally back. My father had to take care of everything these few days. He's been spread out pretty thin. Yu Bing smiled and said, the village chief is very capable. Wu Qing looked at Xiaoxing and asked with concern, Brother Sheng, are you all right now? Xiaoxing smiled and said, don't worry, I'm fine. At that moment, Xiao Lin had already placed the things into the back of the car and helped Xiao Li into the car. No matter how prosperous the city was, Xiao Lin only wanted to satisfy his curiosity. At this moment, after returning to this familiar place, he couldn't wait to rush home. After all, east or west, home was the best. As soon as the tractor arrived at the end of the village, Yu Bing saw Little Tiger waiting at the door obediently. When Little Tiger saw them, it immediately turned to look at the house and barked a few times. Then, it ran forward happily and circled the tractor. Little Tiger! Xiao Li had just gotten out of the car when she heard the sound. After she squatted down and spread her arms, Little Tiger jumped forward happily. Yu Bing whispered to Xiaoxing, I think you might as well find someone to buy a puppy and leave it at home. It can guard the home and accompany Xiao Li. Although she acts like she doesn't care about that surgery on the surface, she must feel upset. A puppy can divert her attention. In the past, it was difficult for Xiaoxing to earn money, so he saved every cent he had. Although he was still short of money now, since he had more connections, things were much easier than before. He had enough money to feed another mouth. Xiaoxing also agreed with Yu Bing's suggestion. That's a good idea. I'll find someone who has a puppy. After Wu Jin sent them back, he went home. At this moment, Jiang Chun, who was in the house, had just finished cooking and placed the food on the table. When she heard the tractor and Little Tiger's cries, she smiled and quickly walked out of the door. Your timing is just right. You three don't have to go back. I thought that you guys probably wouldn't be able to eat until very late if you guys returned home to cook, so I cooked your portions. Come in and eat. Xiaoxing didn't refuse when he heard this. Everyone was quite familiar with each other, so he didn't say those pleasantries. However, he still had to return the favor. Then we won't stand on ceremony. I'll get Xiaolin to bring the rice and vegetables over later. Xiaoli also smiled and said, I can help wash the dishes. Jiang Chun accepted this suggestion happily. Then, she put her arm around Xiaoli's shoulder and brought her into the house as she said with a smile, all right. With your help, I can quit after eating. Previously, Yu Bing had specifically told Jiang Chun that people with disabilities often cared a lot about other people differentiating them from ordinary people. Therefore, if Xiaoli wanted to show off, she should not stop her. If she kept acting worried that Xiaoli wouldn't be able to complete it, it would only make Xiaoli feel even more insecure. Jiang Chun cooked steamed grass carp with chopped peppers, tomatoes and scrambled eggs, tofu with onions, stir-fried zucchini, and vegetable soup. The few of them finished their meal with relish. After sending the Xiao family's 3 siblings away, Yu Bing asked Jiang Chun about the situation in the factory for the past 2 weeks. Previously, there were many things that she couldn't explain over the phone. Although Yu Bing was in S-City, she had been worrying about the matters over here. Jiang Chun looked at Yu Bing helplessly and said, don't worry. You worry too much. When you weren't in the factory, Feng Kai went to City Z and got 2 companies' employee benefits orders for next month. Yu Bing praised with a smile, not bad. You guys don't need anyone to urge you guys to work. You're all good employees. Then, she asked, have they mastered how to use the machine? Is it handy? Jiang Chun could only continue to report, the workers are all familiar with it now. With the machine, the efficiency will increase exponentially. Yu Bing nodded in satisfaction. By the way, did you get a cat for the warehouse? Jiang Chun paused. I bought a bag of rat poison. It's very useful. After rats eat it, they'll be thirsty and run out to find water to drink. Once they drink water, that poison produces toxins, so there's not a single rat in the warehouse now. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much.